Good morning, boys and girls. It's Monday morning. I miss you guys. I've been getting into a really good habit. It took me a couple weeks to get into it, but I am now waking up earlier than I was, and I'm exercising every morning. So that's been very helpful. I hope that you guys are able to move your bodies. I'm not sure what PE has scheduled for you, but I know that with my kids, I just make them go on bike rides, walk the dog, go on their trampoline, help me rake the leaves. We've gone up to Bolton, and we've gone on a little bit of a hike on a friend's private property, wearing masks, and we stayed really far away from our friends. We have also gone to the state park, and we can ride our bikes over to the Saratoga State Park. We've been wearing our masks when we go out in public, but those are some of the things that we've been doing. And then I exercise in the morning. I just do 25 minutes of, like cardio stuff, jumping jacks and things like that. I follow a video. So I feel pretty good this morning. And we are on Sarah Plain and Tall, and we are reading chapters 3 and 4. And I'm going to read them together. And Mason, this is a little shout out for you. I'm going to try not to go off on some tangents. I know that you thought it was funny that I was talking about other things other than the book. Sometimes when I'm reading, I start thinking about things that might be helpful to share with you guys. So sometimes I do that. All right, so I'm looking at our questions for chapter 3, something we want to be thinking about. I like to read the questions sometimes before I do my reading. So while I'm reading, I'm like, oh, I think that was one of the questions, and so I'll think extra hard about it. So the first one is, why does Papa get dressed up for Sarah's arrival? So that's kind of exciting. We're going to see what happens when Sarah gets to the farm, which is nice. And then we want to talk with our, you can do it on Flipgrid, you can talk with a parent, talk to yourself or your dog. Why do you think Caleb asks Anna so many questions while they're waiting for Papa and Sarah to return? So Papa has to go into town to get Sarah because she's arriving by train. So while they're waiting, I can already think about it. Like if I was waiting for someone's arrival, I'd be like anxious. I'd be like a little bit nervous if it's someone that I have not met or someone I'm excited to see. And then another question is, why do you think Sarah brings Caleb and Anna gifts from the sea? So that's something that you're going to have to answer. And remember, when you're answering questions, you want to restate the question and the answer. So why do you think Sarah brings Caleb and Anna gifts from the sea? I believe, or I think, or the reasons that I think Sarah brings Caleb and Anna gifts from the sea are because. Okay, so you want to restate the question and the answer. And then for chapter 4, it says, when Sarah listens to the conch shell. So a conch shell, and that's something you might want to look up so you can see an image of it. That's what I would do in the classroom is I would ask Siri, can you show us a picture of a conch shell? Or I would Google it real quick. And a conch shell is a big shell, and a conch is something that you find in the ocean. And it's a huge shell, and if you put the shell up to your ear, you can actually hear the ocean. It's a sound, it's sort of like a vibration that you hear, and it sounds very similar to the ocean. So I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but I have, and it's true. You can actually hear the ocean. And it says, when Sarah listens to the conch shell, Anna notices that Sarah looks sad. Have you ever felt sad about missing a person or a place? And describe it. So let's think about why Anna might think that Sarah was sad. So I'm thinking that it brings Sarah back to being in Maine. And maybe she's missing her brother, or she's missing her aunts, or the sound of the ocean. And so she might for a second look sad about it. And that's okay to have those feelings, to feel sad. That's totally fine. Have you ever felt sad about missing a person or a place? And describe it. So I think this could really hit home with Liza Sawyer, who just lost her dog, Jet. I know that many of us have lost pets. I lost my dog, Mila, a couple years ago. And I remember when Mrs. Sawyer got Jet, because we've been working together for a very long time. And it was around the same time that I got my Mila. So losing a dog is very, very hard. Dogs don't live as long as humans. Like Eliza said, dog years are 7 years when human years are just one. So they age 7 years and are 1 year. So their life is short and it's very challenging, but it makes us stronger because when we get a dog, we know they're not going to live our entire life. We know we're going to suffer the loss of them, but they bring us so much joy. And so when we think about losing a person or a pet, we also have to think about all the joy that they brought to us when they were here. And then also missing a place. So when I moved from Long Island down by New York City, you know that island that sticks out by New York City? That's also part of New York. It's called Long Island. And I lived on there, on that island for 22 years. So when I moved up to Saratoga Springs, sometimes I would miss it. I would miss a little bit of what Long Island gave to me, which was a lot of my family. They were all very close. I was able to see a lot of my family when I was down there, and I was close to the beach, and I did like to drive to the beach. So I missed a place. Another discussion question for chapter 4 would be when they sing a song with Sarah, Papa sang as if he had never stopped singing. What do you think that means about Papa and about the way he was feeling at that moment? So that's something you might want to talk about with somebody. And then the last question for chapter 4 is Caleb keeps noticing things that Sarah says and Sarah does. How can you tell he wants her to stay? State a page number. So you would say, I can tell that Caleb wants Sarah to stay. Because on page, and you would state the page number, it says, or he says, and then you would say what he says. Okay, so let's get reading. Sarah came in the spring. She came through green grass fields that bloomed with Indian paintbrush, red and orange, and blue-eyed grass. Papa got up early for the long day's trip to the train and back. He brushed his hair so slick and shiny that Caleb laughed. He wore a clean blue shirt and a belt instead of suspenders. He fed and watered the horses, talking to them as he hitched them up to the wagon. Old Bess, calm and kind. Jack, wild-eyed, reaching over to nip Bess on the neck. Clear day, Bess, said Papa, rubbing her nose. Settle down, Jack. He leaned his head on Jack. And then Papa drove off along the dirt road to fetch Sarah, Papa's new wife. Maybe our new mother. Gophers ran back and forth across the road, stopping to stand up and watch the wagon. Far off in the field, a woodchuck ate and listened. Caleb and I did our chores without talking. We shoveled out the stalls, laid down new hay. We fed the sheep. We swept and straightened and carried wood and water. And then our chores were done. Caleb pulled on my shirt. Is my face clean, he asked. Can my face be too clean? He looked alarmed. No, your face is clean, but not too clean, I said. Caleb slipped his hand into mine, and we stood on the porch, watching the road. He was afraid. Will she be nice? He asked, like Maggie. Sarah will be nice, I told him. How far away is Maine? He asked. You know how far. Far away, by the sea. Will Sarah bring some sea, he asked. No, you cannot bring the sea. The sheep ran in the field, and far off the cows moved slowly to the pond like turtles. Will she like us? Asked Caleb very softly. I watched a marsh hawk wheel down behind the barn. He looked up at me. Of course she will like us, he answered his own question. We are nice, he added, making me smile. We waited and watched. I rocked on the porch, and Caleb rolled a marble on the wood floor, back and forth, back and forth. The marble was blue. We saw the dust from the wagon first, rising above the road, above the heads of Jack and old Bess. Caleb climbed on the porch roof and shaded his eyes. A bonnet, he cried. I see a yellow bonnet. The dogs came out from under the porch, ears up, their eyes on the cloud of dust bringing Sarah. The wagon passed the fence field, and the cows and sheep looked up too. It rounded the windmill and the barn and the windbreak of Russian olive that Mama had planted long ago. Nick began to bark, then Lottie, and the wagon clattered into the yard and stopped by the steps. Hush, said Papa to the dogs, and it was quiet. Sarah stepped down from the wagon, a cloth bag in her hand. She reached up and took off her yellow bonnet, smoothing back her brown hair into a bun. This is a bun. She was plain and tall. Did you bring some sea? Cried Caleb behind me. Something from the sea, said Sarah, smiling. And me. She turned and lifted a black case from the wagon. And Seal, too. Carefully she opened the case, and Seal, gray with white feet, stepped out. Lottie lay down, her head on her paws, staring. Nick leaned down to sniff. Then he lay down, too. Nick leaned down to sniff. Then he lay down, too. The cat will be good in the barn, said Papa, for mice. Sarah smiled. She will be good in the house, too. Sarah took Caleb's hand and then mine. Her hands were large and rough. She gave Caleb a shell, a moon snail, she called it, that was curled and smelled of salt. The gulls fly high and drop the shells on the rocks below, she told Caleb. When the shell is broken, they eat what's inside. That is very smart, said Caleb. For you, Anna, said Sarah, a sea stone. And she gave me the smoothest and whitest stone I had ever seen. The sea washes over and over and around the stone, rolling it until it is round and perfect. That is very smart too, said Caleb. He looked up at Sarah. We do not have the sea here. Sarah turned and looked out over the plains. No, she said, there is no sea here, but the land rolls a little like the sea. My father did not see her look, but I did, and I knew that Caleb had seen it too. Sarah was not smiling. She was already lonely. In a month's time, the preacher might come to marry Sarah and Papa, and a month was a long time. Time enough for her to change her mind and leave us. Papa took Sarah's bag inside, where her room was ready with a quilt on the bed and blue flax dried in a vase on the night table. Seal stretched and made a small cat sound. I watched her circle the dogs and sniff the air. Caleb came out and stood behind me. When will we sing? He whispered. I shook my head, turning the white stone over and over in my hand. I wished everything was as perfect as the stone. I wished that Papa and Caleb and I were perfect for Sarah, and I wished we had a sea of our own. Chapter 4. The dogs loved Sarah first. Lottie slept beside her bed, curled in a soft circle, and Nick leaned his face on the covers in the morning, watching for the first sign that Sarah was awake. No one knew where Seal slept. Seal was a roamer. Roamer means to roam around. Sarah's collection of shells sat on the windowsill. A scallop, she told us, picking up the shells one by one. A sea clam, an oyster, a razor clam, and a conch shell. If you put your ear, you can hear the sea. She put it to Caleb's ear and then to mine. Papa listened too. Then Sarah listened once more with a look so sad and far away that Caleb leaned against me. At least Sarah can hear the sea, he whispered. Papa was quiet and shy with Sarah, and so was I, but Caleb talked to Sarah from morning until the light left the sky. Where are you going, he asked. To do what? To pick flowers, said Sarah. I'll hang some of them upside down and dry them so they'll keep some color, and we can have flowers all winter long. I'll come too, cried Caleb. Sarah said, winter, he said to me. That means Sarah will stay. So that was page... Does it not have page numbers 20, 21, 22? That was page 23. 20, 21, 22, 23. Together we picked flowers, paintbrush and clover and prairie violets. There were buds on the wild roses that climbed up the paddock fence. The roses will bloom in early spring, I told Sarah. I looked to see if she knew what I was thinking. Summer was when the wedding would be. Might be. Sarah and Papa's wedding. We hung the flowers from the ceiling in little bunches. I've never seen this before, said Sarah. What is it called? Bride's bonnet, I told her. Caleb smiled at the name. We don't have this by the sea, she said. We have seaside goldenrod and wild asters and woolly ragwort. Woolly ragwort? Caleb whooped. He made up a song. Woolly ragwort all around. Woolly ragwort on the ground. Woolly ragwort grows and grows. Woolly ragwort in your nose. Sarah and Papa laughed, and the dogs lifted their heads and thumped their tails against the wood floor. Seal sat on a kitchen chair and watched us with yellow eyes. We ate Sarah's stew, the late light coming through the windows. Papa had baked bread that was still warm from the fire. The stew is fine, said Papa. Ayah, Sarah said. The bread, too. What does ayah mean? Asked Caleb. It means yes in Maine, said Sarah. Do you want more stew? Ayah, said Caleb. Ayah, echoed my father. After dinner, Sarah told us about William. He has a gray and white boat named Kittiwake. She looked out the window. That is a small gull found way offshore where William fishes. There are 3 aunts who live near us. They wear silk dresses and no shoes. You would love them. Ayah, said Caleb. Does your brother look like you? I asked. Yes, said Sarah. He is plain and tall. At dusk, Sarah cut Caleb's hair on the front steps, gathering his curls and scattering them on the fence and ground. Seal batted some hair around the porch as the dogs watched. Why? Said Caleb. For the birds, said Sarah. They will use it for their nests. Later we can look for nests of curls. Sarah said later, Caleb whispered to me as we spread his hair about. Sarah will stay. That's page 25. Sarah cut Papa's hair too. No one else saw, but I found him behind the barn tossing the pieces of hair into the wind for the birds. Sarah brushed my hair and tied it back with a rose velvet ribbon she had brought from Maine. She brushed hers long and free and tied it back too, and we stood side by side looking into the mirror. I looked taller like Sarah, fair and thin, and my hair pulled back. I looked a little like her daughter, Sarah's daughter. And then it was time for singing. Sarah sang us a song we had never heard before as we sat on the porch, insects buzzing in the dark, the rustle of cows in the grasses. It was called Summer Is A-Comin' In. And she taught it to us, even Papa, who sang as if he had never stopped singing. Summer is a-comin' in. Lodge sing cuckoo. What is summer? Asked Caleb. He said it's summer, the way Sarah had said it. Summer is summer, said Papa. And Sarah, at the same time, Caleb and I looked at each other. Summer was coming. Tomorrow, said Sarah, I want to see the sheep. You know, I've never touched one. Never? Caleb sat up. Never, said Sarah. She smiled and leaned back in her chair. But I've touched seals, real seals. They are cool and slippery, and they slide through the water like fish. They can cry and sing, and sometimes they bark a little like dogs. Sarah barked like a seal, and Lottie and Nick came running from the barn to jump on Sarah and lick her face and make her laugh. Sarah stroked and scratched their ears, and it was quiet again. I wish I could touch a seal right now, said Caleb, his voice soft. In the night? So do I, said Sarah. She sighed. Then she began to sing the summer song again. Far off in a meadow lark sang too. All right, boys and girls, so that's the end of chapter 4. So we've read 3 and 4 this time, and I'll post it on YouTube. And your parents can locate it. It's going to be under Sarah Plain and Tall. So SPL, I think it's BCS SPL number 3 and 4. I'll email your parents and let them know where it is. I'll link it to my email. And you'll already know that because that's how you'll have gotten this. So that was silly. So Parker, I hope that I read each word correctly. So sometimes, I don't know if you guys notice this, but fluency is when you read and it sounds like fluid, like water, sort of flowing down a river, and it sounds fluid, sort of how I was reading. When kids are learning how to read, they read sometimes very choppy. So they might read word for word, like, who is the narrator? Instead of, who is the narrator? So when you're in 2nd grade, you're still learning how to read fluently. And that's why it's really helpful to hear your teachers and your parents reading out loud to you so that you can hear what it should sound like when you do your reading. And then I also say read with expression. So I don't want to read like a robot. Read like a robot. That was from Brain, not Brain Pop. That was from Go Noodle. So that's a Go Noodle that you can watch. I'll try to add some links to Go Noodle for the next couple weeks of lessons because they're always fun. Anyway, so we want to make sure that we're reading fluently. Sometimes when I'm reading fluently, I read words the way that I think they should naturally come, and they might not be exactly how they are in the book. But as long as they make sense in my head, I don't go back and correct them. So sometimes if you're reading while I'm reading, you might notice that I might have skipped a word or changed a word. And I want you to know that it's okay to do that as long as the meaning stays the same. So if I read something and it makes sense, then it's okay. And you'll do that as you get older. It's okay sometimes when that happens, but I tried really hard to read every word the way that it was written. What else? I miss you all. I can't wait to see you on our Wednesday chit chat session when I get to chat with all of you. And you can contact me anytime. Mom and Dad know that they can email me and we can set up a FaceTime if you need some extra help on anything. I'll push out another time where we can do a group lesson. I thought that was really fun to chit chat together. I really enjoyed seeing everyone. And I know that we were missing some, so I'm hoping that those kids will be able to join us. I think it was Alexis, Brenda, Andrew. I think we had everybody else. So I love you and I miss you, and I hope you're enjoying Sarah Plain and Tall. And I'll record chapter 5 and 6 soon. And I will see you soon. All right. Bye, guys.